Hi, everyone. I have a very, very special person I'd like to introduce to everybody. I have a lot of different films that come across my desk. There's Hallmark movies, there's Christmas movies, there's comedies, there's a lot of different projects that come through here. But one of the most special that I have for all my life been waiting to score is a World War II film. A beautiful one just came across my desk, and the story behind this movie, it needs to be told, and so I wanted to, have a quick sit down with the director, Mr. Blaise Mancillas, and I asked him to just join me today online to kinda talk with me about the movie and about a couple of things behind it, but firstly, let me just give a warm introduction to, director Blaise Mancillas. Blaise, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Todd. It's always a pleasure. I'm ecstatic that you're the composer for my film, and I'm even more excited to be talking about it with you.
Fantastic, man. Let's dive right in. Tell us about the movie is called Friuli. Uh, Tell us about the name, the story, and the general gist of what the film is.
Friuli is the name of a region in northern Italy where my grandmother comes from, and this film is a story based on a moment in her life. She was a teenager on a farm in Italy in 1943 when her home was occupied by Nazi soldiers for nearly a year. So I wanted to make a film about her life and this intense moment in her life. And I also wanted to take a stab at making a World War II film because, just like you, I'm also a big fan of World War II movies. I've seen a lot of them, and I wanted to make my own mark on one. And so I thought, what better way than to tell this true story of my grandma and this, event that she endured.
Which is really exciting that this is based very much. I mean, you showed me a lot of the pictures, that this was born out of history. This was a real chapter that needs to be told. Tell us a little bit about the casting process and who you found for each of the characters.
Sure. One of the things that kind of irks me when I see a World War II film is when you have characters that speak a language that they might not have actually spoken at the time. Whether this is a character that's a German character that doesn't know English, but for some reason speaks English with this weird German accent. I wanted to avoid that completely, and I wanted the characters to speak in their native tongue. The big roles were the family, so I needed to cast a mother about mid-40s who spoke Italian. I needed to cast a young woman, ideally an adult that could appear to be a teenager. And then I needed to cast a young boy, approximately 9-ish, 10 years old, who spoke great Italian and had one big scene where he really goes for it. And this one boy in particular, Raphael, he was just like, he blew it out of the park. I mean, he's such a really smart, mature young boy who had lots of experience already, had done a few short films and even a feature and a little bit of television. And on top of that, he's such a bright kid. He was trilingual. He spoke Italian, English, and German, which I didn't need that, but already you get a sense of what kind of a bright young lad he is. And then, I was very lucky enough to cast a wonderful woman, Bianca Falco. She hails from Naples and has excellent command because she's a native Italian speaker. And then Allegra Venturi, who plays my grandmother. She's from England, I believe, but she also speaks Spanish and Italian on top of English. So we have a really smart cast. And it was really fun to get to meet them in the callbacks. Don't mind my friend's dog that just walked up the stairs. But yeah, the language was really important to me. And on top of that, our big scary Nazi character, I had a friend of mine, Roger Clark, who some of you might know from Red Dead Redemption 2, the video game. He plays the lead, Arthur Morgan. And he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, Blaze, if there's any roles in your film, I'd love to be a part of it. It seems like a really cool film." And this is when I was putting out feelers for casting. And Roger, I had no idea that he spoke German. He told me that he used to tour and do plays in Germany, and he spoke German. So that was like very exciting because I wanted the chance to work with a friend who's also very talented. And on top of that, he also just was like the right type for the part. But just to make sure things were nice and in order, I did hire a German language consultant and I hired an Italian language consultant. Elena Vanoni, a wonderful theater director. She helped me with not only ironing out the script so the Italian made sense, but she worked with Raphael, our young lad, to I think every other week for a few months to practice his Italian. So it was just like really sharp. And then same with Roger, who is not a native German speaker. I hired this really wonderful actress and filmmaker, Lydia Hallfeld from Berlin, who worked with Roger on his German and also helped me out ironing out some wrinkles in the script for the German language. So I had wonderful, talented actors, and I also had a lot of wonderful help from these language consultants. So that was again the most important thing to me was getting the language in a place so it felt realistic and natural and not forced in any way.
To be honest, that was really the first thing that drew me into it, and largely the reason why I was so excited about it was the authenticity. You can't do a World War II. You don't just throw that together. I mean, we're talking about a slice of history here that people have debated and degrees in college are made over this period of time. But the fact that their language was so on par, I was so impressed. So let's talk a little bit about like the set design and the locations, because you put a lot of meticulous time into the casting. I'm imagining a lot of work went into, I mean, we have, well, first of all, there's a cornfield and you're in New York. So I'm assuming that there isn't like a cornfields R Us rental plot that how did you go about the set design with this film?
Yeah, so this whole film takes place on my grandmother's farm in Italy, and they had a big cornfield. And I'll tell you, if you're a filmmaker and you live in New York City, I think the last thing you want to do is set your movie in a cornfield, because that was probably the biggest hurdle. If we did not find this location, we wouldn't have a movie. So I was sort of at my wit's end, and whenever I ran into somebody, this might sound crazy, but I was asking people just, "Hey, do you know a cornfield? Do you know a cornfield?" I was hoping I could find something within a 2-hour driving distance of Manhattan. And wouldn't you know it, one day I ran into a classmate from acting school, and I was like, "Hey, do you know a cornfield?" And she was like, "Actually, I do. My parents live in Connecticut in this small town, and the town of Woodbury, Connecticut, they own this cornfield." But this town, which was, 90 minutes with no traffic, 2 hours with traffic, I reached out to them and they were so helpful. I went up there. I have my notes here just to make sure. May 2022 was when I first met the cornfield. And I drove up there. They gave me a tour of the property. The corn was only this tall at the time, so it was a little bit hard to get a sense of what the fields would look like. But on the property, they had this interior space, they had a barn, and then they had a huge, huge garage for holding. It was kind of like kismet. They had everything that I needed all in one location. And so the parks people that were very nice and showing me around, they're like, "Oh, there's this dirty storage closet over there, it's in that shack." And I'm like, "Oh, can we go check out the shack?" And they said, "Are you sure it's not that nice?" And I'm like, "Oh, please, I just want to check it out." And so we go into this shack and it's filled with garbage and old fridges and all kinds of junk. It's covered in dust and I think there were hornets' nests in there, but it was this little small room that had this wonderful aged wood exterior. It had a window and two doors, and I saw it, and I immediately knew, oh my gosh, this is our interior location. Like I think I have an idea of how we could transform it. So yeah, I mean the location, and the other thing too, Todd, I'll mention is like corn hasn't changed much in how we farm it. It looks the same all the time. It's tall, it's there, it's in rows. And there's something quite amazing too. And I know we'll talk about costumes later. There's something amazing about putting people in period clothes and then just, hey, go stand in front of that corn. Immediately you feel transformed. It's almost eerie. I feel like I'm looking at ghosts or something like that. It was it's quite compelling. And corn is also just like a beautiful thing on camera. It's wonderfully cinematic. You can disappear into it. It moves like Jurassic Park. It catches the sunlight. It was really a beautiful location. Again, the fact that I found it was a miracle.
When you guys see this film, you'll understand the amount of work that went into authenticity, which I really commend for you, because a lot of times that I've been a part of that part of the process where everybody's like, we don't have time to be monkeying around with cornfields, and I don't care if the corn doesn't look right. I don't care if the uniform isn't perfect. We got to shoot this movie. But I'm like, that's what makes the movie what the movie is, and that is the important part of it, which is so exciting. But speaking of their costumes, and it's, from what I understand, it's getting harder and harder to do a World War film because we're getting further and further removed from when it happened, and it's not as though you can walk around, and people don't think about things like this, but you just can't walk around the parking lot wearing a Nazi uniform carrying a Luger. Like, talk to me about the uniforms.
In terms of the uniforms, there's two Nazi characters, Nazi soldiers that appear in this film, and there's one American soldier that appears. It is hard to source Nazi uniforms, but I found a guy in Brooklyn who specializes in police and military uniforms, domestic and foreign, present and past, who had a wonderful collection. So I was able to source these uniforms from him, as well as highly realistic weapons. We had a Thompson submachine gun that an American soldier carries that's made out of metal, has moving actions. You can take a magazine off it, you can put it on. It looks like a real submachine gun. You have to take great care with all these things. Thankfully, none of them actually fire, and no guns get fired in the film. So safety wise, we didn't have to worry about that. But still, how you transport these things, especially if we're shooting outside, you can't just have people walking around with guns willy nilly, especially highly realistic ones. And it was also important to me too. Like, I didn't want any sort of silliness around the Nazi uniform. Like, I didn't want, I made a pointed effort to tell the AD, who made sure they told everybody and put it on the call sheet. This is a World War II movie. Nazis did do the Holocaust and killed millions of Jews as well as millions of other people, and it's not okay. And there's nothing funny about it. So I didn't want to get to set one day and someone's taking goofy selfies in a Nazi uniform. And of course, all the cast and crew was incredibly professional. But that was important to me. Like, this isn't a silly thing. You know what I mean? These are Nazis are horrible people that killed many people, and we don't want this to ever happen again. Be clear.
All of this thought that you put into it, like when I watched it, I mean, and honestly, we're working on the score right now, and the music was just effortless. When a film is direct and clear and convincing and real, the score tends to write itself, honestly. At the end of the film, you have a pretty ambitious, controlled fire, you know, which is not easy to do cinematically. How did that go?
It's fire. It's dangerous. Thankfully, the park, they had given me approval to build a fire on set. I was still a little nervous about it because it's a fire and it's dangerous. But very generously, the Woodbury Volunteer Fire Department, they had caught wind that I was going to be doing this fire. I told them around what time we were going to be shooting it, and they're like, okay, well, we might stop by to supervise, which I was like, please do. Fire department on set that I don't have to pay for. Love it. Love it. So we had the fire chief come out. We had a couple other firefighters who not only built the fire for me so it looked the way I wanted it, but they also extinguished it. And there were also moments where I wanted sparks at certain times. And so one of the firemen, I begged him, I was like, hey, do you mind if you just like stand by the fire, and every time I give you a wave, you can hit it with a stick and I can get those beautiful sparks. And so I even got like a crew member out of them for free, which was really nice. But I'm so grateful to the town of Woodbury, to their parks department, as well as their volunteer fire department.
A lot of ambitious. And this is your first film.
Yes, this was my first film that I've written, directed, and produced myself. If anyone's looking for advice on making a film, time is the greatest gift you can give give yourself, you know. Again, I have my schedule here. The first time we scouted the corn was May of 2022. Second time I scouted it was in September, and we shot it on September 2nd. You know, that's a whole year of prep for 7.5 pages of dialogue or something like that, you know? But it's a lot of work. It's a period piece, so you need all those little elements to look and feel good. Otherwise, it's if there's one little thing off, it's gonna look cheap and the whole fantasy falls apart, you know?
So it's more than a film that you're making. You genuinely are making a historical slice of historical authenticity here. So it's like, oh, by the way, it's a film, you know, and it's almost like you had to get the work that goes into this is staggering. So we're moving into post production here, and we just started the score. And I think I met you through the cinematographer, through Dennis Thomas, who shot the film beautifully, beautifully shot. His footage is stunning, and I'm biased. I think he's one of the most brilliant cinematographers that exists. But I think that's how we met. Moving forward with the score and everything. Um, Talk to me a little bit about that. What are some of your expectations as we're moving through?
Yeah, you know, I wanted a score. The film in some ways is simple. It's not too convoluted, and I wanted music that reflect that. And I wanted music that didn't necessarily tell us how to feel. You know, I didn't want something patriotic or too hopeful. I wanted something uneasy. I One of the big themes in this film is things are not always so black and white, and I think that's what I was going for with the music. So I am grateful to Dennis, who is a wonderful filmmaker and cinematographer, who made this film look all the more beautiful. But I'm grateful to him for connecting me with you to be a part of this, because I am a fan of your work, and it sounds like from what we've been talking about, you understand this world that the film lives in and what it sort of needs in terms of sound. You know.
It is, and it's fun to be able to you know, a lot of the times when I get a film, like, I love my job and I love my work, but a lot of times people hand it to me and they're like, "Hey, we need this in a week." It's boom, 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 but you and for those of you who don't know, I when we started this film, I started scoring it, I just started chemotherapy, and so I I was like, I want to please let me do that," and Blaze was gracious enough to give me some time to work through that, but that gave me time to think about it, and in keeping with the authenticity of the film, and so far, I think we're really creating a masterpiece here. So, well, please, I really appreciate the time meeting with us today. And is there anything else you want to share with everybody?
I can't wait to share this movie with everybody. You know, we've finished editing. The editing process is done. The picture is locked. For everyone else out there, you know, we're in the process of scoring this film. I'm working with Todd and also getting the sound design for it and some subtitles and credits. But we're at the home stretch. So, you know, not too long after people see this video, hopefully we have a film coming out to a festival or a screening near you. So I'm ecstatic.
Beautiful. Well, Blaze, I really appreciate your time. And everybody, you are really in for a treat when this is ready to view. So thanks for your time, Blaze, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Todd. Glad to work with you, buddy.